Hi everyone. So let's get started on our 25th lecture, which going to focus on uh, actually continue our discussion on cost estimation um, for the engineering economy. So we're mainly going to focus on the fixed and variable costs. And these two terms, if you are not familiar, here are the definition. So fixed costs are those unaffected by changes in activity level over a feasible range of operations for the capacity or capacity available. Right? Typical fixed costs include insurance and taxes on facilities, general management and administrative salaries, license fees, and interest costs on borrowed capital. Right? These are the costs, no matter what happens, you have to pay for this, right? You have to have the general management to overlook um, the company or the project, have to have the administrative people to help with the project, have to get the license fees and pay for the interest costs, so on and so forth. Of course, fixed cost doesn't really mean it does not change, right? It can change, in fact, when large changes in usage of resources occur or one plant expansion or shutdown is involved, fixed cost will be affected. Usually it could be affected. That's the fixed cost. Variable costs vary in total with the quantity of output or other measures of activity level. That's the definition of variable cost. And here are some examples related to that. So cost of material and labor used in a product or service, right? Um, if one person install one light bulb, that's um, that 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 that's there's a cost for installing one light bulb, right? And another person will have another light bulb involving another cost, more cost from this labor, right? This is because they vary in total with the number of output units, even though cost per unit remain the same. You probably all heard of the crazy story, right? In certain states, all public projects, you need to have, um, you need to have workers from union to to do it. And then usually it's not just one worker come, it could be two worker come. And then they can take, 15 minutes to change a light bulb. That's still going to cost 1 hour labor for two worker to work on it. But that's usually how it happens, right? That's usually how it works. And that is variable cost based on the service a person is providing that's going to cost a certain amount of money. And a similar thing for, um, let's say if we want to build 1 mile of road or 1 mile of railway, uh, that's going to be a certain amount of money. If we want 2 miles, then the cost will double, right? So on and so forth. And in fact, in the US, the cost to build railway is very expensive. And think about the Green Line extension happening in Boston, right? The cost, I think, is 600 million per mile after so many cost escalation. Compared to the cost in Europe, countries usually range from 100 million to $200 million. So, if that's the cost, and if we want to expand to multiple miles, 10s or 20 miles, that's going to be a lot of cost for the city, for the state, and for federal tax money, right? Side story, but we definitely need to find a way to lower our cost to build more public transit systems. But that's variable costs. Incremental costs related to variable costs is the additional cost that results from increasing the output of a system by 1 or more units, right? That's incremental costs. We already gave some examples, so basically like that. Here's one example, and if you understand the definition, look at this example and think, which one is fixed cost, which one is variable cost. So the example is like this. The contractor is looking at 2 alternative sites to set up asphalt mixing equipment for a resurfacing project. The job may require up to 50,000 cubic yards of mixed asphalt paving material, and it will take 4 months. The contractor is paid $8.05 per cubic yard delivered. So what will be the cost? And you can see that the 2 alternative solutions, some are same, some are different, some items are different, right? Site A is located a bit further, 6 miles away, and site B is only 4.3 miles away. The hauling expenses are the same. Per cubic yard material per mile is $1.15. But the rent is pretty different. Site A, a bit closer, and we need to pay $1,000 per month. And site B is $5,000 per month, much more expensive. No matter how long you're going to rent it, you need to pay a certain amount of money. And that is to set up for site A, that's $15,000. And for site B, that's $25,000, right? Site A is pretty secure, safe, located in a safe area. Don't really need an attendant to look after the site. But site B, you actually do need someone to look after it, and that's $96 per day. The total volume is the same, and the time is the same. So that's basically the difference so far, right? That's basically the difference so far. Now, let's think about it. Just for this example, what are the fixed costs? If you're not sure, let's look at the definition and some of the examples and think about it. What are the fixed costs? You can pause the video and think a little bit. Okay, we have to give some thoughts, and let's see what are the fixed costs, right? One thing is pretty obvious. Usually people are not confused, is the setup cost, right? No matter you're renting it for 4 months or 6 months or 8 months, you have to pay for the setup. Setup is fixed cost, and it's different. They are different for the 2 sides, right? That's one thing. Are there any other fixed costs? So one thing people can get a bit confused is that what about rental, right? It seems like no matter what, you need to pay for rental, but you only pay it by months, right? If it's 4 months, let's say for site A, right? Each month the cost is $1,000, and for 4 months you need to pay $4,000. 5 months you need to pay $5,000. It feels like it's based on the unit, it's increasing, right? And it could be the same for attendant, right? It's per day, certain amount per day you need to pay this amount of money, and more will be the more, right? More days you need to pay the attendant more money. But most of the time, rental is actually considered a fixed cost. It happens months after months. It have a term to describe it. We'll talk about it later. But rental, it's something. It's prerequisite. It's prerequisite, right? You have to pay for the rental, be able to do your work, and it's pretty much fixed, right? So usually we consider this as a fixed cost for rental. And similar for attendant, right? This is not directly related to work. may not, you can consider it's not directly related to work, but it's related to administrative salaries. You have not in a strict sense, but you can consider it as administrative salaries, right? You have to, or the um, personnel salaries, not directly related to the work, but you have to have someone to look after the site. So per day, you need to pay for that amount of money, and it's required to perform the job as well, right? So it's, we can consider it as fixed cost as well. And then opposite to that, the variable cost is just basically the money you need to pay to get the amount of product or the amount of materials to the job site or delivered to the other party, right? Then if you deliver 1 cubic yard 1 mile, that's $1.15, $1.15, right? If it's 2 yards 1 mile, that's $2.3, so on and so forth, right? Of course, you only need to deliver 50,000 yards, but if the owner or the other party require more cubic yards, yeah, I can do it, but you need to pay more, right? That's the variable costs. Fixed costs basically remain constant over a wide range of activities, while variable costs vary in total with the volume of output. But no matter what, usually we want to calculate the total cost. Total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. You put them all together, and then to calculate which one will cost you more, right? For one option, maybe it has a better or lower fixed cost but higher variable cost. For the other cost option or alternative is the opposite, and then we want to make sure to add them all together to provide the same amount of money. Sorry, I mean we want to add them together to find the total cost and do the comparison, right? Then, well, let's take 2 minutes and calculate what will be the cost for side A and what will be the cost if the contractor choose side B. All right, it's relatively straightforward, right? Compared to what we did before, it's pretty easy. For side A, first we calculate the amount of cost to haul all the materials to the job site, right? It's per cubic yard per mile, it's $1.15, 6 miles away. We need to haul this amount of material. We multiply all them together, that give us this number. And apparently, very obvious, this is the biggest part, biggest chunk, right? We need to pay for the rent for 4 months, so it's 1,000 multiplied by 4. And then we need to pay for the money to set up the site. So add them together, that's $364,000. Side B, it's the same procedure. Number are a little bit different. The distance is 4.3 miles. The rental is $5,000 per month. And then the setup fee is a little bit higher as well. And also, we need to pay for the attendant, right, for the cost. So add them all together, that's $300,410. That's the amount. And you can see that side A cost, even though these two values are lower, because it's located so far away and we need to transport so much amount of material, so it's end up cost a lot more, right? That's a cost. And of course, the cost comparing cost is important, but we also want to understand what will be the profit. We're doing the work for profit to make money, right? So, like we said, the contractor is paid $8.05 per cubic yard delivered by the other party. So the total revenue will be 8.05 multiplied by 50,000. That give us $402,500. That's a total amount, total revenue, right? You can see this revenue is higher than both the total cost for option A and total cost for option B. So the contractor is going to make money no matter what. And obviously, the lower your cost is, the higher your profit is. So it's better to choose option B, right? That's for this example. Now there's also a concept which is called break-even point. Break-even point is basically at a certain point, the total revenue will be equal to total cost. Now then come back to this question. Can you calculate and tell me, let's say the person going to choose side B, right? The person going to choose side B. The time is the same, 4 months. All the other costs are the same. The only thing changed is the cubic yard. So how much cubic yards need to occur that for the contractor to reach the break-even point? Right? Obviously, the more you need to transport, the more cost will be, right? So how much more this number need to increase to reach the break-even point? Think about it. We'll talk about this live tomorrow. The recurring costs are repetitive. Related to that, there's also recurring costs and non-recurring costs. Recurring costs are repetitive and occur when a firm produces similar goods and services on continuing basis. Right? This could be the in the example could be the material we need to transport, right? If the other party, the owner, does require, more material to be transported, sure, I can do that, but you need to pay more for each cubic yard and each mile. This is going to be how much money you need to pay, right? So that's the variable. Variable costs are recurring costs. Are usually, for most of the time, are recurring costs because they repeat with each unit of output. So that's easy to understand. But a fixed cost that is paid on a repeatable basis is also a recurring cost. This could be the office space rental, like we discussed before, right? It's fixed cost because we have to pay for it to perform the work, to perform the job, but it doesn't mean that it's one lump sum. We pay it at one time, right? Sometimes it is, like the cost we to set up the job site, but it can be recurring on a monthly basis, right? So that's recurring and non-recurring cost. Recurring cost. The non-recurring costs are those that are not repetitive, even though the total expenditure may be cumulative over a relatively short period of time. This could be a purchase cost for real estate upon which a plant will be built, and a construction cost of the plant itself, right? Meaning that, let's say Tesla want to produce more cars, more vehicles, right? For Tesla, it's not a project firm, right? How they make revenue, make money is really by building the cars and selling them. So for them, the non-recurring cost will be, I need to build this plant in China. Remember the recent one opened in China. I need to build this there, and then yeah, for a short period of time, I pay a lot of money, but it's just a one time deal, right? I put this money, I built the plant. That's non-recurring cost. After that, each vehicle I produce will cost me a certain amount of money. That's recurring costs, right? Recurring costs. Then based on the money, I'm going to sell it and then make more profit from it, right? Those are recurring and non-recurring costs. So we talk about fixed and variable costs. We talked about recurring and non-recurring costs. They are not necessarily the one-to-one, right? They are not necessarily one-to-one. There's also direct, indirect, and overhead cost. Direct, indirect, and overhead cost. You probably often hear these as well. Direct cost can be reasonably measured and allocated to a specific output or work activity. Labor and materials are usually directly allocated with the product, service, or construction activities. In construction, we say labor, material, and equipment, right? You can easily assume, okay, if you are doing the electric work or HVAC work, the worker, these crew members have been working on this. They use this much material. They use this type of equipment. That's one direct cost. You can directly associate activities with the people, the material, and the equipment. Right? Those are direct costs. Indirect costs are difficult to allocate to a specific output or activity. This can be costs of common tools, general supplies, and equipment maintenances, right? You not necessarily sure what costs, how this money can be applied to each activities, but they are needed. They're needed to achieve the project, right? Then there's overhead cost, which consists of plant operating costs that are not direct labor or material costs. A lot of times, indirect costs, overhead, and burden are frequently the same. They refer to the same thing and not differentiate them that much. There's more definition and terms we need to discuss. There are cash costs versus book cost, right? Cash cost is a cost that involves payment in cash and results in cash flow. So really the cash are flowing from one party to another, right? That really is a cash cost. Book cost or non-cash cost is a payment that does not involve cash transactions. Book costs represent recovery of past expenditures over a fixed period of time. You probably don't hear book cost a lot, but depreciation is the most common example of book cost. Depreciation is what is charged for the use of assets such as plant and equipment, right? That you probably heard a lot. Really, depreciation, yeah, a lot of times I borrow your car or I use your plant. I borrowed your, let's say, maybe some heavy crane for my construction site. Well, I return back, right? So it shouldn't be have any. I didn't do anything to it. It shouldn't have any cost, but it actually costs certain depreciation because you use for it the condition of the equipment changed. Actually, the condition deteriorate a little bit, so that's why depreciation will be charged. There's also the difference between sunk cost and opportunity cost. Sunk cost is a cost that has occurred in the past and has no relevance to estimates of future costs and revenues related to an alternative course of action. Alternative course of action. And let's say we did something, and one company, okay, I want to rent this site, and I'm going to use this site to do the project. They find out that, oh my God, after they rent the site, they find out the site actually doesn't have the condition to produce the material or products they needed. Now they have to look for another one. And then, whatever happened before, the sunk cost, which the money already spent, it cannot do anything for the future, right? So it doesn't really impact what's going to happen in the future. This is kind of related to the probability we learned before, right? Remember we talk about the most easy example is flip a coin, right? So yeah, generally speaking, we know, right? If we flip a coin, there's a 50 chance I get a head and a 50 chance I get a tail. So you flipped 9 times and they are all head. So, well, next time is definitely going to be a tail, right? Next time is definitely going to be a tail. It feels like there's a penalty to it, to the probability. You feel like there need to be a penalty to the probability. It have to be a tail. But not really, right? It doesn't really matter what you get from before. The probability for the next flip going to be the same, right? No, it's same here. Doesn't matter how much money you spent before. It's not going to change. It shouldn't change your decision for the future, right? Then there's also opportunity cost, which really, looking at the future, right? Opportunity cost is a cost of the best rejected. That is to say, the foregone opportunity, and it's hidden or implied. Hidden or implied. Let's say for a company. Well, let's just take one individual as an example, right? Let's say you have 2 job offers, and now you need to decide which one is the best. So if you choose A, your opportunity cost is basically B, right? Your opportunity cost is basically B because you missed. If you choose A, you miss the opportunity or the benefit come from B, right? So if company A gave you $10,000 more, that's great. But maybe company B give you a better health insurance plan, right? Or retirement plan. That's the opportunity cost. If you choose A, that better opportunity for retirement plan or health insurance will be missed, right? You're going to lose that opportunity. But that's basically the opportunity cost. Same thing for a company, right? I can take project A or I can take project B. I only have so many people working for me, and I can only take so much job. If I decide to take A, then B will be the opportunity cost, right? B will be the opportunity cost. So, well, just a side note, if you do get offer A and offer B, right? A has a better salary, but B really have a better retirement plan. What do you do? How do you choose? What will be your next step? Think a little bit about it. Well, of course, you don't want to miss the opportunity cost. You don't want to miss the opportunity. You don't want opportunity cost to be too big, right? So the first thing you want to do is that if you like a company A, you think you like the salary, you go talk to them and say that company B offered me this retirement plan. Can you match or not? Right? That is your first step. You're in a really good position to negotiate at this point. Right? That's just a side note. Then there's also life cycle cost. Life cycle begins with identification of the economic need, the requirement, basically, and ends with the retirement and disposal activity. Life cycle cost is really the summation of all costs, both recurring and non-recurring, related to a product, structure, system, or service during its entire lifespan. Um, think about one building, right? I'm personally from my background is in construction, and then a lot of times, especially traditional sense, right? We think about one building from the from its programming to its finished construction, and that's the lifespan. That's how far we think about it, right? And that's going to have a certain amount of money, but it's actually doesn't necessarily stop there, right? So the life cycle of a building, of course, the construction phase is usually a very short period, right? Maybe 3 year, 1 year to 3 year, you finish the project, and that's it. But the building going to be operating for 50 years, even 70 years, so on and so forth. A lot of things going to happen. A lot of money going to put into the building during that 50 to 70 years, right? The energy cost, the maintenance cost, the renovation cost, all this kind of money is going to, the biggest chunk is actually going to happen during that time, right? So how do we think from the beginning of the building that satisfy the needs until the end, right? And then for North System, the same thing, right? When we build the ISAC building, we think about how much it will cost for us to build it, but North System also going to use it for a certain amount of years, right? And then how do we make sure that this building, the cost for this longer period of time can be reduced as well, right? So that's what we want to consider for the life cycle cost. And you can see this chart shows a very good example for the for life cycle and the real phases of life cycle and their relative cost. Two major parts is acquisition phase. For construction, it could be for building the construct the build, and then the operation phase, basically have the plant or building keep moving, right? Keep moving. You can see that with different ways, you can really have a different cumulative life cycle cost, right? If you make good decisions, you can have a really good way, a possible ways to save the money at the beginning. You make very good choice, very good decision at the early time. The total cost for the entire life cycle could be reduced.